Watson, Doctor of Medicine here, completed my surgical studies in the year 1878 and was attached to the army as assistant surgeon, stationed in India at the time. The Afghan war broke out. The regiment going there, I was struck on the shoulder by 2 bullets, which completely shattered the bone and grazed the artery. I was removed with a great train of wounded soldiers to Peshawar, and from there to London, where I rallied and improved. With little money and few possibilities, I was fortunately recommended to a young lady named Holmes. Her knowledge was extensive. When I asked her what her business was, she simply said, crime and criminals. My life and work is to leave to future generations an account of her extraordinary adventures and remarkable insights. I called in upon my friend Holmes the second day after the holidays with the intention of wishing her the compliments of the season. She was lounging in her chair, holding a disreputable, heartfelt hat she held in her fingers. You are engaged, Holmes. Perhaps I interrupt you.
Not at all, Watson. I'm glad to have a friend with whom I can discuss my results. The matter is a perfectly trivial one, but there are points in connection with it that are not entirely devoid of interest, or even of instruction.
And I suppose this thing has some deadly story linked onto it, and that it is the clue that will solve some mystery and provide punishment of some crime?
No crime. Just one of those whimsical little incidents that happens when you have 4 million human beings jostling each other within the space of a few square miles. Many a little problem will be presented, which could be striking and bizarre without being criminal.
I will admit, 3 of our last 6 cases have been entirely free of any legal crime.
Precisely. I have no doubt that this matter will fall into some innocent category. You know Peterson, the commissionaire?
Yes, might this be his hat?
No, he found it. Its owner is unknown. It arrived in the morning with a good, fat goose, which is, I have no doubt, is roasting at the moment in front of Peterson's fire. The facts are these. At about 4 o'clock in the morning, Peterson, who as you know is a very honest fellow, was returning home from some small jollification. As he was making his way homeward, he saw in front of him a tallish woman carrying a white goose slung over her shoulder. As he reached the corner of Good Street, an argument broke out between this stranger and some roughs.
Goose, go get it. Give it to me, it's ours! It's ours!
One of them knocked off the woman's hat. She raised her stick to defend herself, smashing a shop window behind her. Outnumbered, she dropped the goose, took to her heels, and vanished into a labyrinth of streets. Peterson returned with this tattered hat and a goose.
Which he surely returned to its owner.
My dear lady, there lies the problem. It is true that "For Mrs. Helen Baker" was written upon a card tied to the goose's leg, but there are thousands of Bakers and hundreds of Helen Bakers in this city of ours.
Did he not advertise?
No.
Then what clue could you have as to his identity?
Only as much as we can deduce.
From this hat?
Precisely.
But what can you gather from this battered old hat?
You know my methods. Employ them.
Ordinary shape, worse for wear, lined with red silk, initials HB, dusty and spotted.
But you fail to reason from what you see.
Then what can you infer?
This woman was probably intellectual and well-to-do, though she has now fallen on to some evil days. This may also account for the obvious fact her husband ceases to love her.
Astounding.
Leads a sedentary life, goes out a little, is middle-aged, and had cheap hair dye within the last few days.
Okay, now you're joking.
Not in the least. Also, it's highly improbable that she has electricity in her house.
Okay, but how can you deduce this lady's an intellectual?
It's a question of cubic capacity. A woman with so large a head must have something in it.
Okay, but as you said, her decline of fortunes?
If this woman could afford a hat so expensive 3 years ago, note the style, and has had no hat since then, she has surely gone down this world of ours.
Okay, clearly. But her recently cheap hair dye?
A magnifying lens discloses hair dye inside the hat.
Okay, but come now, no electricity in the house?
At least 5 candle wax stains. Are you satisfied?
Very ingenious, Holmes. But as you know, no crime has been committed, no harm has been done, save the loss of a goose. All this seems rather a waste of energy.
The goose, Miss Holmes! The goose, ma'am!
What's up the goose, Peterson?
Look what my wife has found in his throat.
In its throat, sir?
A pouch in his throat. Look here.
Fine job, Peterson! Do you know what you got here?
A diamond, ma'am. A precious stone. It could cut the glass as if it was putty.
Not just a precious stone, the precious stone.
Not the Countess of Morker's blue diamond?
Precisely. It's absolutely unique. And I've heard there's a reward of £100 million. Not 1/20th of its market price.
Great heavens!
Apparently, it also has sentimental value. I heard that the Countess of Morcar is prepared to part with half her fortune if she can only retrieve it.
But it was lost at the Hotel Cosmopolitan, if I remember all right.
Exactly. December 22nd. John Horner, a plumber, was accused of abstracting it from my lady's jewel case. The evidence is seen as overwhelming. So much for the police. The question for us now to solve is the sequence of events leading from the theft of the jewel to the throat of a goose in Tottenham Court Road. Mrs. Baker is the one who found this jewel. We must find this Mrs. Baker and see what part she plays in this little mystery of ours. Simplest means first, we advertise. Should that fail, we will recourse to other methods. Found at the corner of Good Street, a tattered old hat and a goose. Mrs. Helen Baker can have the same by applying at 6:30 p.m. at 221 Baker Street. Clear and concise.
But will he see it?
All his friends will direct his attention to it. Here you are, Peterson. Run this down to the news.
What about the stone?
Ah, yes, thank you. I shall keep it. I say, Peterson, grab a goose on your way back. We must have one to replace the goose your family's eating now. Look how it blinks and sparkles. It's a nucleus of a crime. Every good stone is. I will lock it in my strongbox and drop a line to the Countess of Morcar, saying that we have it.
Do you think the man is innocent, Holmes? What about Helen Baker?
I think, Watson, that Mrs. Helen Baker had no idea that the goose she was carrying was of considerably more value than had it been made of solid gold. Goodbye, Watson. I must continue my professional rounds, but I'll be back at the time mentioned to untangle the tangle. Good evening, Watson. I found Mrs. Helen Baker by the door. Pray take the seat by the fire, Mrs. Baker. Is this your hat?
It is undoubtedly my hat.
I fail to see why you did not advertise.
Shillings have not been so plentiful as once they were. I do not wish to spend in a hopeless attempt at recovery.
A natural impulse. By the way, about the goose, we were compelled to eat it.
To eat it?
Waste not, want not, eh? But the goose by the door is of equally the same weight and perfectly fresh. Will that not do just as well?
Oh, certainly, certainly.
Then there's your hat, and there your goose. By the way, would it bore you to tell me where you got the other goose from?
Most certainly.
I'm somewhat of a foul fancier.
Most certainly. A few of us frequent the Alpha and near the museum.
Our host, Wingate by name, instituted a goose club and we give a few pence every week to receive a bird during the holidays. Very interesting. I believe our knowledge is complete. Goodbye, Mrs. Baker. So much for Mrs. Helen Baker. It's quite clear she knows nothing. Are you hungry, Watson?
Not particularly.
Then I suggest we turn our dinner into supper and follow up the clue while it's hot.
By all means, but we will need our scarves, for it's bitter cold.
Your tea, landlord, should be excellent, if it is as good as your geese.
My geese?
Yes, I spoke a half an hour ago with a member of your goose club. A Mrs. Helen Baker?
Ah, yes, I see. But you see, ma'am, that is not our geese.
Indeed! Who's then?
Well, I got 2 dozen from a saleswoman in Covent Garden.
I know those women. Which was it?
Breckenridge is her name.
Don't know her. To your good health, landlord, and prosperity to your house. Good night. Good tea and small information, eh, Watson?
Average tea and average information.
On we go to Breckenridge next. Good evening. A cold night?
All the same to me, sir.
Sold out of geese, I see?
Let you have 100 tomorrow morning.
No good, I'm afraid.
Some still to be sold at the stall across the way there.
We were recommended to you.
Who buy?
The landlord of the Alpha.
Sent him 2 dozen, I believe.
And fine birds they were. Now where did you get them from?
Hello? Hello? What you be driving at? Let's have a stir. The two of you.
See here, fellow. I should like to know where you got the geese to which you sold to the Alpha.
Would you know? Well, I shan't tell you. How's that?
It will not serve. And why should you get a thorn up your toka over such a trifle?
Because I'm pestered beyond good humor. There's a thing to be sold and the money to be paid, and that should be the end of business. But oh no, it's where are the geese and who'd you sell them to? And what's the price paid? One would think they were the only geese in the world to hear the fuss that was made over
Get
there.
a hold of yourself, man! I'm a fiber that the bird I ate was country bred.
Do you now? Well then you've lost your fighter, for it's town bred.
And I assure you it's nothing of that kind.
And I say it is!
Nonsense!
Do you think you know more of fowls than I, who have handled them since I climbed down in my mother's cradle? I tell you in no uncertain terms, them birds that went to the Alpha was town bred.
Ridiculous!
Ridiculous, eh? Will you bet cold British coin on that then?
I don't like to impose a lady so obviously wrong. But I'll impose a sorbet on it, just to teach you not to be so obstinate.
Delicious, I say. Absolutely tasty. Well then, Mrs. Know-It-All, I thought I was out of geese. But before I finish, you'll find the one still left in my shop. You see this little book right here? That's a list of folk from whom I buy. This page in red ink is a list of my town supplies. Now just read out the third name, eh?
Mrs. Ockshott, 117 Brixton Road.
And read out the last of the entry.
December 22nd, 27 geese at 7 shillings.
And underneath,
Sold to Mr. Wingate of the Alpha.
done and won.
Deeply chagrined is what I am.
As you should be, sir. Trifle with my knowledge of where a goose came from and where it went. So much for you and your ridiculous hat. Dear me, Holmes. I was quite afraid there was going to be fisticuffs.
I'm quite bad at fisticuffs, Watson, but I dare say I know his sort. If I'd offered her £100, she wouldn't have given me such complete information.
Quite glad you're right.
I fancy, Watson, that we're nearing the end of our quest. The only point that remains for us to determine is whether we visit this Mrs. Ockshott tonight or reserve her for tomorrow morning. Who are you then? You will excuse me, but I could not help overhearing the question you just put to the saleswoman now. I think I could be of assistance. My name is Holmes. It's my business to know what others don't know.
And what is it I don't know?
You're endeavoring to trace some geese sold by Mrs. Oxshaw of Brixton Road to a saleswoman by the name of Breckenridge, to who in turn sold it to Mr. Wingate of the Alpha, to which Mrs. Helen Baker is a member.
Oh my gosh! You're the very person who I wanted to meet. You have no idea how interested I am in this matter.
In this case, we better discuss in a cozy room rather than this windswept marketplace. But pray, before we go on, please, who do I have the pleasure of assisting?
Jennifer Robinson's the name.
No, the real name. It's always awkward doing business with an alias.
Well then, Jane Ryder.
It's a pleasure to meet you, Jane Ryder. Head attendant of the Hotel Cosmopolitan. Come along and all will be revealed. Pray, take the seat by the fire. I'll just slip off my coat and join you to discuss this little matter of yours. Now then, you are trying to trace some geese, I presume?
With the greatest pleasure.
Or rather, I fancy, one goose. It is one goose, I imagine, which you are trying to trace. White, with a yellow bar across the tail.
Amazing! That exact goose.
It came here.
Here?
Yes, and a remarkable bird it proved to be. Quite intriguing. It laid an egg after it was dead. The boniest, brightest little blue egg I've ever seen. The game's up, Ryder! Now I have every link in my hand. All the proof I could possibly need. So there is little you can tell me. However, Ryder, you heard about this blue stone of the Countess of Morcar's.
Captain Cusack told me of it.
I see. Her ladyship's waiting maid. Well then, the temptation of sudden wealth was too much for you, as it has been for better villains before you. But you were not very scrupulous in the means you used. Pretty villain though you are, you knew this man, hoarded of power, was accused of nasty business beforehand. So what did you do? You arranged a small little problem in my lady's room. You and your confederate Cusack. You then arranged for him to be called for the job. You then rifled the jewel case, raised the alarm, and had this unfortunate man arrested. You then, for God's sake, have mercy! Think of my mother and my father. I've never gone wrong. I'll never do it again. Just don't take me to the courts. I'm begging of you. Sit back down in your chair. It's all very well to cringe and crawl now.
I'll fly, Mrs. Holmes. I'll leave the country, ma'am. Then all the charges against me would be dropped.
We will talk about that. But now, let us hear a true account of what happened. How come the jewel into the goose, and the goose into the open market? Tell us the truth, boy. There lies your only hope of safety.
I'll tell you just as it happened, ma'am. I did not know at what moment the police might not take it to their heads to search me and my room.
As well they might.
There was no place at the hotel where it would be safe. So I made for my sister's house. She then asked me what was the matter and why I was so pale, but I told her I was upset over the jewel robbery at the hotel. Then I went to the backyard, smoked a pipe, and wondered what would be the best option.
Speak on, ma'am. Be brisk.
I had a friend once, named Maudsley, who went to jail and was serving his time in Pentonville prison. We had fallen into a talk one day about the way of the thieves and how they could get rid of what they stole. He then told me that the stone could be turned into money. I was worried, though, that on the way to him I'd get stopped and searched. Then, as I stood in my sister's backyard, I noticed the geese waddling about my feet. Suddenly, an idea came into my head that showed me how to be the best detective that ever lived.
Could you indeed?
My sister told me some weeks before that I might get a pick of her geese from my dinner table. I'll take that goose right now, I thought. Looked about and caught me a fine, big goose, pried its bill open and thrust the stone inside. The other geese caused a disturbance, and out came my sister to know what was the matter. As I turned around, my goose slided off among the others. "What you doing with that bird there, sister?" says she. "Well," says I, feeling which was the fattest for my table. "Oh, very well," says she. "Kill the one you want and take it with you." And so I did.
You've got a flair for theatre, Miss Ryder.
So I've been told. Carried it all the way to Kilburn, then got a knife and opened the goose. When I tell you, my heart turned to water when there was no sign of the stone. I'd mistaken the bird, you see. Rushed back to my sister's house, and there was not a bird to be seen there. "Where are they all, Maggie?" I cried.
Gone to the dealers!
Exactly.
Which dealers?
Breckenridge of Covent Garden. There was 2 with a barred tail.
Life surprises, eh?
Crystal clear it was. I ran as fast as my feet could take me to the woman Breckenridge. But you told me there was none left. You heard her yourselves tonight? My sister? She thinks I'm going mad. Think of it myself sometimes. And I did not even get the wealth for which I sold my character for. God help me.
Get out!
What?
Oh, what, Mom? Heaven bless you.
No more words, get out! After all, Watson, send her to jail now and you make her a jailbird for life. Chance has put in our way one of the most whimsical and singular little problems. And its solution is its own reward. Quite energizing, eh, Watson? Yeah, a wonderful profession at its best.
Did you hear that? That was surely a knock. Who would come at this hour? Perhaps a friend of yours?
Other than you, I have none. I do not encourage visitors.
A client, then! And there we have it. A precious blue diamond, stolen and hidden inside the neck of a goose. The goose and the hat, both lost in a street fight and find themselves in Holmes's table, both giving a clue to the thief's identity. After stuffing the goose inside the neck of the thief was none other than the head attendant of the Hotel Cosmopolitan. After stuffing the diamond inside the neck of a goose in her sister's farm, Jane Ryder mistakenly picks up the wrong goose. Knowing that her sister had sold the goose, she searched all the markets and all the tea shops, but in doing so, left her very identity. And there we have it. Another case closed.